Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here, make sure this is what I want it to look like. I'm pretty sure I like the way this looks, the way it's laid out. We got our button, our text, and then I'm going to go back into our code, and on the onCreate, I'm going to get a reference. Unlike Visual Studio, which automatically creates references to things, you've kind of got this detached concept in Java, in the Android development, where you have a layout file, which is a definition of an interface that can be applied to multiple forms or multiple activities. So instead of it automatically wiring up a reference for you, you're going to have to say, this current activity uses this layout. And so here's our main layout. And on that layout, there is a button. I'm just going to call it button test. And the way that we get a reference to that is we say find view by ID. And what I did there is I did Control Shift, which is very similar to Visual Studio. And we want to find it by ID. The way that this works is you have this concept of R for reference, and then you say .id .button title. That's what we call it. So there's the ID of our button, and we found it by its ID, but we need to cast it to a button because it returns back as just a normal view. And you notice I got these red squigglies. It's complaining about something. So I hold my mouse over and I say, oh, it can't resolve this because I didn't import button. So I click on that. It creates a button import line right here. And now everything's fine. It knows what a button is. It's able to cast to it. I've got a reference to it. I also want to create a text view. And we're going to do the same thing here. Find view by ID, r.id. There's my title. And it doesn't know what a text view is until I do that. Adds a line, and now we're good. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to create a button listener. Java does not have the same concept of events as Visual Studio does. Visual Studio has this concept of delegates, where you say, here is the button click event for this button, and it wires it up, and off you go. In Java, what you have to do is you have to create a special class called a listener, and then you say this listener is going to be in charge of doing something, or it will receive information when this event fires. So we're interested in hooking into the click event of the button, and so we're going to use a click, an on-click listener, and then that will give us information on the on-click event. So we're going to say button title dot set on-click listener. Well, let's just say new on-click listener, and then when you hit enter, it implements that for us. I need to import that, and now everything's fine. So what I did is I said, create me a new on-click listener. It said, oh, you need to have this click in here, which is auto-created, and then you can do whatever you want. So this is actually a new class. It's defined as a new class. And something I like to do is go down here and say protected protected on-click listener button title underscore click equals this. So what I've done now is I have this new variable named button title click, which is of type on-click listener, which is defined as having this functionality in it. And since it's a variable declaration, I need to close it with a semicolon. And so now I'm all set up, and then I can just pass this into here. So this is looking a lot more like a Visual Studio setup where you've got what looks like a delegate down here. This is my event, and then this wires it up. So what we're going to do is move this down to here, or if you wanted to be even more like Visual Studio, we could take both of these, put them up here as private or protected if you wanted to, and then don't initialize them until down here on the onCreate event. And now what we've done is we've created a reference to these things that we can use within our project, just like Visual Studio. So now it's kind of like Visual Studio where you created a form, you created your objects, and it auto wires them up, creates you an instance that you can reference. And now in my onClick event or click listener down here, I can just say txt title dot set text to you clicked or something. So you'll notice that it has set, instead of just saying this dot text, which is what Visual Studio does, because under the hood Visual Studio actually does create a getter and a setter. Java doesn't do that for you, so you have to use the get blah, get text, or set text, or get blah, set blah. So we're going to leave that in there, and there we go. And we're going to also do another thing. We're going to set what's called a toast message. So toast is the name for like a tooltip inside of Android, where you have the little thing that comes up at the bottom that says, hey, something just happened. So I'm going to do that. Toast.makeText, and I'm going to say main activity.this, and the text that I'm going to toast is, look at this toast, and then I'm going to set the duration to toast.length_long. And then I'll explain a little bit about this. So what this is doing is it's saying toast, call this static method make toast, and then pass a reference to the activity which is going to be used, which in this case is this activity. Because this is technically a new class, it's not part of this class, and so instead of just saying this, which would pass a reference to the onClick listener class that we created, we need to specify, not this, we want this. So you specify it like that. And then this is the text that's going to appear. Look at this toast, and then the length is going to be length long, which is a constant that's declared in this class.